The number one thing about starting to plant is please start small if you are new to gardening. Let's turn this grass into a garden. Hi, I'm Annette and welcome to Kitchen Garden Farmhouse. In today's video, we're going to be starting a garden from scratch. Let's grow as much food as we can, as often as we can, and as long as we can. But before we get started, please take a moment to subscribe if you have not done so already. And every time that you ring the notification bell, you'll get notified when I upload a new video. Let's begin. This is where I'm going to be starting my new garden. It is in the front yard. The terrain is a little bit uneven, but I can work with it. So the number one thing to do is look around in your yard and see a spot that will get at least 6 to 8 hours of sunlight a day. As far as the grass, I'm going to use some commercial weave fabric. I have used this fabric before and it works very well. It is my goal to try to eliminate as much weed pulling as possible. This weave fabric goes by many different names, but you'll know it when you'll see it. Here's the ground cover that I'm going to be using. It looks the same on both sides. This is a polypropylene fabric. It has no fuzzy or felt to it at all. It will fray when you cut it. However, if you cut it with some type of heat, then that takes care of the fraying. Also, in putting down your weave fabric, I recommend getting these long galvanized garden staples. Usually wherever you purchase your weave fabric, they're going to sell these staples. Another thing that I like about using this type of ground cover is that water and air will go through it. It's the next day and I'm back. It took almost all day yesterday in putting down this ground cover, but it's going to be so worth it because having a strategy in place to help with weed control is going to save you hours as time goes on. So basically, I want to go over with you 8 things in how to get a garden started from scratch. So we went over the first one is picking a location, making sure that that location gets at least 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight a day. And number 2 is think about some kind of strategy that you're going to put in place to help control the weeds, so it will save you a lot of work in the coming weeks and months and ever how long you have a garden in that spot. So in putting the weave fabric down, you can still plant directly in the ground if you so choose to do that. All you have to do is just get something to make your cuts in the plastic, preferably with something hot so the fabric will not fray. Now I chose not to roll-a-till under this ground before I put the weave fabric down. I did not want to go through all that process. But that's okay if you want to roll-a-till. If you're thinking about planting directly in the ground, you might want to consider roll-a-tilling just to kind of break the ground up some, or you can just skip that altogether. And the wonderful thing about the weave fabric is you still can plant in containers, you can plant in raised beds, and once again, you can plant directly in the ground, and you have the wonderful weed barrier in place to save you hours of work as time goes on. Now my garden here ended up to be about 30 feet wide and about 50 feet long. Number 3 on the list in starting a new garden is to seriously think about how are you going to water your garden. I know dragging a water hose around or lugging water around every day is not a pleasurable way to grow a garden. However, sometimes we don't have any choices until we can figure it out later. Now to begin with, I am going to water mine by hand, or I'm going to use an overhead sprinkler. Now here in Florida we have a lot of humidity, and using an overhead sprinkler is not really desirable because a lot of the plants we grow does not like their leaves wet, and it only encourages fungal growth more. However, down through the years, I have used drip line. That is my number 1 go-to when it comes to watering, is using a drip line system. You can also use soaker hoses as another thing that may work well in your situation. I am not set up right now to use a drip line system, but until that time comes, I'm just going to do the best I can with what I have to work with. The next thing to do is to get your garden beds in place. So for me out here in this garden spot, I'm not going to get all my garden beds put in place at one time. I want to give myself time to think about exactly what type of garden bed I might like to have, and then just decide that as time goes on. But to begin with, I do have some strawberry plants that I need to get in the ground, and so I do have some material that I purchased to start that bed. You can do container gardening, you can plant in the ground, you can do raised beds. There's so many things, so many choices that we have when it comes to gardening, and that makes it fun to have so many choices we can pick from. Here's the lumber that I have to make my first raised bed. It is not going to be a permanent bed. This lumber is a 2x6x12. I'm not going to be using any screws or put it together in a permanent way. At this point in time, I'm just going to kind of put it up, support it with some bricks, because I'm thinking about doing something differently later. Once you have your garden beds in place, whether you're going to make beds directly in the ground, use containers, or raised beds, the next thing to do is to take care of the soil. Once you have your garden beds in place, whether you plant in ground, in containers, or raised beds, the next thing to do is to think about the soil. Now that I got my garden bed in place, I have to decide, do I want to leave this ground cover on the inside of my bed, or do I want to cut it out? Most vegetable plants has a root system about 6 inches long. However, there are some that requires more. And since I'm going to be planting strawberries in this bed frame, I'm going to take the inner part out so they will have more room for root growth. So I'm just going to cut this out all the way around. I have the inner weed fabric cut out. I have this beautiful thick green grass on the inside. So what I'm going to do next is lay down cardboard. Okay, so I have my cardboard laid down. Now it's time to fill this bed with some soil. I got my cardboard from Costco. These are called cover slips. They come in between the foods on the pallets and they're free. I got a yard of compost from Atlas Organics in Dover, Florida. This yard costed me under $30. This is certified organic compost. Okay, I finally got the raised bed filled with soil. Once again, this is organic compost. And so I'm going to amend the soil with different things. I'm going to put some sand in here and different fertilizers. So this would be a good time if you're making a new bed for the first time, is to put different amendments in with the soil to enrich it so your plants can grow even better. The next thing that I'm going to add to my soil is sand. Strawberries likes a sandy loam, so that's what I'm going to add at this point. Now I know Florida has a lot of sand, but I don't have anywhere in the yard to dig holes to try to get sand. So I went to the big box store and bought a bag of play sand. This play sand is economical. It's been pre-washed, pre-screened, and it's 100% natural, and it's safe for children to play in. Okay, so I am mixing in the last little bit of sand in this raised bed because I'm planting strawberries here, and strawberries really need to have some sand in the soil. They really like that sandy loam. So after I finish this, think about what kind of fertilizers you might need in your soil as you are putting your garden together. One way to know for sure is to have a soil test done on it to see what kind of nutrients are present and which ones are missing. I will be doing a pH test today, but I will not be testing for the nutrients, so I am just going to add some all-purpose fertilizer to the soil. Once you have your soil in place, whether you're using a raised bed, in the ground, container, or whatever, it's time to think about what kind of amendments or fertilizers you're going to be adding to your soil. Most of the time I do organic. However, this is a brand new bed and I have not had time to generate the soil naturally for its amendments in nutrition. So therefore I'm going to use a little bit of Osmocote. It's guaranteed not to burn, and normally, like I said, I will use just organic, but sometimes I will use synthetic depending on the situation, because I feel like it's better to use synthetic than to lose a crop if you do not have time for that crop to grow and for the microbes to break down the organic fertilizer to make those nutrients available to the plants, because it does take longer for natural organic fertilizers to be available to the plants because of the time it takes for them to break down with the microbes in the soil. Now that I got the fertilizers in, I'm just going to incorporate it within the first couple inches of the soil here. Once you get your amendments and your fertilizers in your soil, then that's a good time to go ahead and get some water on it, even before you start planting your seeds or your seedlings, because it really takes the water to start activating that fertilizer. Another thing that I like about using this type of ground cover is that water and air will go through it. At some point, I will be putting down some sulfur to try to help lower the pH. If your pH is too low, then you would put down lime. Number 6 is, after we get our garden beds in place, it's time to start planting according to your growing zone. We can do seeds, we can do seedlings. However, if you do seeds, it will be more economical. But sometimes we have to do seedlings depending on our situation. This is a beautiful strawberry plant. It's already got a little blossom on it. The number one thing about starting to plant is please start small if you are new to gardening, because it is a commitment, it is work. We want it to be rewarding, we want it to be fun, we want to enjoy it. So therefore, even if you grow just a couple things, some of your best things that you like to eat, just start small and then grow bigger and more as you get used to doing stuff on a small scale. Number 7 is mulch. This is a blueberry plant and I have got some pine bark on top, but we can use chop up leaves, we can use hay or straw if it's pesticides free, we can use pine needles, we can use dry grass. Mulching is so important because it's going to help reserve your moisture. Even if you cover your row with some type of weave fabric, that's also considered mulching. Number 8 is to watch for problems. We've taken the time to find the perfect location. We put a weed strategy in place. We began to think about how we're going to water our garden and put that in place. We got our garden beds in place. We filled them with soil. We began to plant our seeds and plant our seedlings, and we're mulching and all that work. We do not want pests to destroy our gardens. So we really have to watch for problems. This right here is a blueberry plant, and a grasshopper was beginning to strip down the leaves. So I came out here, I finally found the grasshopper, he's gone. We have to keep our eyes on the garden. Even a couple of days can make a big difference. Grasshoppers can really destroy a garden. Right here is a roselle tree, and all the way down from the ground up, it has just stripped the leaves, and it done it quite quickly. So once again, the pests can destroy your garden. So we have to have pest management in place to preserve our garden so we can get the rewards of a beautiful, bountiful harvest.